Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So I'd like to quickly go over my Paladin healer build for hardcore Vault of Stars, where you need to maximize your healing potential so you can make sure your allies can actually have a decent chance of staying alive. Now as a Paladin healer, we have the benefit of being able to prevent, let's say, one-shots a lot easier than other classes because of our shields. We have abilities which will give our allies who we heal these divine barriers, and these divine barriers can be a significant amount of shield. You can see that's like nearly 400,000 shield right there. So what do I use in my setup to maximize it? Well, initially I like to not use any gear, let's say like the Bone Devil's Ribcage or the Gristral Horns. I prefer gear which is going to give me a constant bonus that I can rely on. The way I have it right now is my power will proc up to 90% with these fairy boots when I'm nearby party members, and I will also be able to get my outgoing healing all the way to that 90% with using my Circle of Divinity. Usually you can get this off fairly frequently and get that outgoing healing, you can see, nearly to 90%, because 15% from here plus another 74% from here, and I will get another 4% from here when I am in a party with 4 others. Now one thing I am lacking with regards to gear is the outgoing healing ring. I'm using this ring instead. Ideally I would have this ring right here. It would give you that 4,500 outgoing healing rating, that's 4.5%, and also give you that extra critical strike whenever you have shield or temp HP of 5%. It would be pretty neat, and I would switch it out instead of this guy's crowning jewel. Otherwise, this one's pretty good here, the Red Eyes Glare, 5% more power. Now you can of course use your own setup of gear there. I'm not saying what's absolutely the best, as generally we are pretty flexible. Use what fits your playstyle. I really like this Rain Catcher, it gives that constant 7.5% outgoing healing. Of course, as long as your health is above 50%. Your Rain Drop Remnant, giving you that 5% outgoing healing. These arms, generally it's just for the item level, but it will give you that stacks of power. And then these Fairy Steps, giving you that movement speed when you're away from your allies, and giving you that extra power when you're close to your allies. I normally like to run with these Storyteller Journals, mainly just for that extra percentage gain of that power, along with that hit points. Otherwise you can of course indeed use other artifacts with the higher item level, like say like the Erratic Drift Globe, your Halaster's Blast Scepter, those newer ones with the 4,500 item level. So as a healer we're mainly focusing on our power, crit strike, crit severity, and outgoing healing. The way I prioritize it is that you want to stack power and outgoing healing as much as you can. They both give the exact same amount of outgoing healing in terms of potency, so you want to just keep them balanced. There's not much need, I feel, to go over the 75% mark in outgoing healing because of our Circle of Divinity, otherwise you're just kind of wasting that 15%. I like to focus then after power and outgoing healing, you focus on crit severity. The higher output heals of those crits, the better. And lastly, you then focus on critical strike, which is your critical heal chance. We don't particularly need a whole lot of this crit chance because of our feat, the critical touch. However, critical touch won't affect that actual aura of divinity when we cast this Hand of Divinity. So you're better off with a high crit chance to get this to proc a nice big shield on your tank buddy, just to give him that bit more survivability. So yes, in my power setup, I'm generally using Cure Wounds as my off emergency heal button when you need to quickly heal somebody just for a little bit, and just at will bit of damage. Doesn't really matter which one you use here. Encounters, generally I like to use my Divine Touch as my main heal power when we're running in a dungeon in those mob areas when you have lots of enemies and your teammates are spread out. With that you can then cast it on one target and you can get their shield to be a pretty significant amount. Like here when we get that crit, we get that nearly 400,000 shield. So that's pretty neat. Ideally your allies wouldn't use the Rusted Iron Leggings to reduce that size of the shield. So that's Divine Touch. If you tend to be grouped up a lot, or if you just find Divine Touch too hard to use by having to aim it on just individual targets, then use Divine Shelter to just keep everybody healed. Then offhand you're using Sacred Weapon and Circle of Divinity as your main other two encounter powers for that divinity regen. You could of course also use like Banishment when you have lots of enemies, and also Burning Light just for those stuns. They can be really useful, since when enemies aren't dealing any damage, then you really don't have to do any more healing. Then for our dailies, I'm generally sticking with Lay on Hands as an emergency heal button, and either Sanctuary or Shield of Faith as that kind of utility. Sanctuary gives that really nice heal over time, but the problem is you have to spend time to cast it and you can't do anything else. It is a pretty nice big heal for everybody within the area. That's 600 magnitude, and I do use it on the black holes, since when you get pulled it won't cancel it, and you can get everybody healed then while they're in the black hole. Otherwise you use Shield of Faith when all your allies are spread out. You just give them that little bit of a buff. Class features is of course Composure and that Aura of Restoration, and these are the feats set up right here. I don't really recommend anything else. However, you could use Battle Focus instead of Prayer of Opportunity. If you can get used to using Prayer of Opportunity when it actually procs, then it's very useful to save that divinity. Instead of spending 140 there to heal the tank, you could just use a free cast, especially when you're running with Divine Touch. You go and cast this, and then you get it to proc. That's like you're saving that 140 divinity. So let's move on to my companion setup. Yes, I'm using the Golden Boulette Pop, and primarily for that outgoing healing bonus of 7,500 through its enhancement. You could of course use other companions, but then you would have to juggle around and rejig your stats and try get the outgoing healing from other places. Something to keep in mind is that not only the Golden Boulette Pop is going to give us this reinvigorate, we are actually going to be able to get from the Summer Festival this new companion right here, which is also going to give us reinvigorate. And you could use this to buff your outgoing healing instead of, let's say, the Golden Boulette. But since I do have it, I'm using Potent Precision to buff up that critical severity to that 90%. I did get the fortunate proc there from the Forger's Box of crit severity, so usually it's at about 83%. So then this 7.5% would make it to that 90%. Then I'm using the Baby Deep Crow to give 7.5% power, also using the Alpha Compi for 7.5% power, and then using the Black Dragon Ion Stone, 7.5% crit chance, the Golden Boulette for 7.5% outgoing healing, and the Fawn for that 3.8% power and also crit chance. You can of course switch around whichever you choose here. Just try and balance those stats, focusing on power, outgoing healing, and then your critical severity, and lastly critical strike. And that's pretty much it for companions. I am using those runestones of giving that extra power there, empowered ones, and then I'm also using some arcane ones for crit severity. However, I would highly recommend, instead of the Baby Deep Crow and let's say the Alpha Compi, you could switch to using the Tamed Velociraptor. This Tamed Velociraptor, when you are in a party with 4 other people using it, you will obtain 18.75% of this power. And that is more power than the Alpha Compi and the Deep Crow combined would give us. We're still gaining more power just by using the Raptor, meaning we can switch the Compi out to something else. A very good option, if you're running hardcore Vault of Stars, would actually be the Feral Velociraptor, giving this awareness, this 18.75%, if you're again within a party with everybody using it. This would give you a massive boost in survivability, and the Tamed Raptor giving a massive boost in power. The unfortunate thing is that generally DPS characters don't actually need this power. They could of course juggle around and not use any gear that would give power, and thus benefit from using it, especially since the Watermelon Sorbet, the old version, giving 10% power, is no longer obtainable. So the best method would be to have a Tamed Velociraptor and a Feral Velociraptor, and everybody in your group would have it. Then we move to our mounts. In our current tab here, generally running with the Mythic Tyrannosaurus Rexum, that's the King of Spines, just to give that extra damage debuff on the enemies so that our allies can deal more damage. and I'm also using Ferocious Predator for power and crit severity. But again, use whatever you need or have available to you to give you those extra stats for healing. Then I'm using a bunch of different insignia bonuses here. Gladiator's Guile, just 3 of them for extra movement speed, because why not? And Assassin's Covenant for reducing our defensive stats, but increasing our offensive stats, helping us out there. Then I'm also using mainly just Dominance and Brutality insignias to give me that extra power and forte, and then also power and crit severity, all which is pretty nice for giving us those healing stats. Then for collars, really doesn't matter, but try and pick up the one that's going to give you this outgoing healing and also crit severity. I do have recharge speed there instead though at the moment. Then lastly for our boons, I just slot in all the power and then the crit severity and also the crit chance, and then it doesn't particularly matter from there. But you might want to pick up Marathon Runner for movement speed, and you might also want to pick up this Healing Potion boon bonus ones. Gives 5% additional healing on those healing potions. These ones right here. You can see it's giving me 253,000, and you want to put this in conjunction with the guild boon of the group healing potion bonus, and this will give it so that when you use a healing potion, you'll also heal everybody for 75% of your hit points. This, in my opinion, it really helps out in dungeons to keep your allies alive. It is a cooldown, however, of I believe 18 seconds, so you won't be able to spam these. Then I'm using my critical strike there. You could of course use power, and I'm also using in defense, just either defense or hit points. Doesn't particularly matter, but I find the defense to be a little bit better since we have a lot of hit points but not so much defense. Finally, what food and buffs am I using? Well, you could of course use, I believe it's the Devil's Precision Overload, one from Hell Pit, and it would give you this extra 5% crit chance, and if I do so, you can see I now have 85% crit chance. However, these are expensive, and if you don't have them lying around, it's not much need. And then for Hardcore Boss, I'm also using a Bulwark of Brimstone to give that extra survivability, so that myself doesn't get absolutely wrecked. You could of course switch this out for the one that would give 5% reduction to physical damage. That's probably a bit better than the hit point one, but I just don't have them available to me. Then for my actual buffs, I'm using of course this Forger's Box. Ideally you would have a Mythic, that's the extra power, and then a random stat. And then I'm using these buff food here, these ones up here, the Flask of Potency, the Wildstorm Elixir, Watermelon Sorbet, and then like an Invocation Blessing to give me that extra crit there if I'm fussed at doing so. And there we have our stats up at so. So I would have 90% power while in combat or while near teammates with these boots. I would have my crit chance just be there at the 86. Crit severity will get buffed up to that 90% using Potent Precision, and then my outgoing healing will get buffed up to 90% using my Circle of Divinity and also having some more teammates. Now that's really it. Hopefully it's not too long for you guys. Just kind of an update on my build with this new Vault of Stars gear, and also what I recommend using for the hardcore boss to get your teammates healed through. Many people have a bias of preferring to use, let's say, a cleric healer or even a warlock over us, but I believe we have that extra utility to prevent people from dying as easily, since we can give them those massive barriers. It's just about actually using it properly. Using Divine Touch is a really good way to do it on healing everybody with those big shields. You could of course switch around your Hand of Divinity and give everybody one, but I feel the cast time is just too long for that to be viable. So hopefully I presented this well. If I did, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.